Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Jim and Rob Over-Analyze Movies, the live video podcast for people who are looking for a deeper conversation about the films we watch today. We've got another show for you tonight. We're going to be discussing FARHA. Now, this is a fictionalized retelling of an oral account of a young girl's experiences during the 1948 Nakba, or catastrophe, where hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were violently expelled from their homes in what is now the state of Israel. Yeah, on that upbeat note, let me let's welcome the co-founder of the show, my co-host and good friend, Mr. Jim Chaboyko. How are you doing, buddy?
Good.
Well, maybe not an air horn, but we can give you some applause.
There's a little bit of both.
Why not?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a really enthusiastic guy in there. Yeah, welcome everyone to the Come and See Film Festival.
Oh, there's next week's show.
Yeah.
Christmas Eve.
Yeah, you thought the mist was fun. Fill your boots with it. No, I'm just kidding. Several references to the mist I was planning to make today, but yeah. Hi, how are you doing? I'm unmuted, just to check.
You are unmuted, my friend. Yeah, plenty of signal there.
Nice.
Yeah, Jim, FARHA. Now, before we get into our conversation, I've got a couple of items. Now, as I said before, this film is a fictionalized retelling of an oral account. So I didn't think it would need me to get into the historicity of Sallam's film. That said, the Nakba itself, which is a bit of Al-Nakba or An-Nakba, Arabic for Palestinian Arabic for the catastrophe, is a really well researched piece of recent / ongoing history. And so I did think, Jim, it would be a good idea to provide some resources so folks could read up on it if they wanted. I've now in the description, folks, you'll find links to a reading list and a free ebook from those Marxists, those zany Marxists that hate market books. But I've also included a link to a great interview of Nathan Thrall, the former director of the Arab-Israeli project, by Adam Conover on Adam's YouTube channel. That one's, I would say, Jim, it's a little more mainstream. I would call it mainstream center-left American viewpoint, but I still think it's worthy of a listen. Gives you some, well, like I said, mainstream center-left angle on the history and current context.
Yeah.
Now, Jim, second, and this is really more a question for both of us. And like I said in the digital green room before we started the show, I was a lot more worried about this before I saw the movie. I'm a little less concerned about it. But that said, given you and I are both white settlers, we're beneficiaries of another Western imperialist project that violently displaced and continues to oppress an indigenous population. That would be Canada, of course, folks. Now, is it appropriate for us to comment on this film? Like, what's your take on that first, and then I'll give you my angle on this and why I'm less concerned than I was before.
Well, I think in terms of merely bringing attention to it, which is part of it, I see this film, and we'll probably get into it, is something that you witness. There's almost no other way to sort of deal with it, and it forces you to witness it, a la what FARHA goes through. But I think just the sort of the mere existence of it is one aspect that of it. I think also too that there's, I was looking this up, and I looked up Nakba as well, really quickly, just on a few sources, but one of them was Wikipedia. And when it says in literature and film, when you're looking under Nakba in literature and in film, it lists one thing, and that's this movie. Now, there are probably other representations of this at either part of something bigger or other pieces that the Wikipedia thing just didn't mention. But
Yeah.
that seems, there's 1,000 movies about the Battle of the Bulge, and there's 1,000,000 movies about gangsters and that kind of thing. Well, historical, like, recreate. How many movies of Al Capone are there? But you have something like this. I've even seen more movies on the partition of India and Pakistan and Bangladesh.
Criminal.
Yeah. As we're reminded by a certain speech giver lately. But I've seen more movies about the Indian partition than I have of anything sort of Middle Eastern, and so yeah, I think just talking about it is good. We're not obviously approaching it from the point of view of a Palestinian villager. And then there's, like with a story's a story, you can talk about the story points and how it's delivered and things like that. But in terms of like comparing it to your own experience, yeah, it just it doesn't really. I look back and you know what, had a fairly never worked in a coal mine, never I've never been kicked out of anything, maybe a couple of bars, but that's about it. One for singing Barrett's Privateers in Halifax, but anyway, that's a whole other story. But yeah
How can you get in trouble for singing Barrett's Privateers in Halifax?
I know.
Of all the places, Jim.
You would think, yeah. I wasn't even all that drunk, but anyway. So
I enjoyed the all that drunk.
Yeah.
Okay. Myself, especially this film, I think it really is not just appropriate for us to witness it, as you say, to watch it, but also to discuss it. In part because it is in a way as a document, a story, a narrative. It is a witness of itself. It's kind of here is a way you can see this experience through Palestinian eyes, at least one little girl's eyes. And so I think that's not just appropriate, but incumbent upon us. Not that we've been, okay, we're certainly not perfect, but we've also done some examination of indigenous films that show let's say English and French Americas, view of that experience. And I certainly wouldn't tell anyone here, oh, don't see that movie about the Trail of Tears.
Yeah.
You can't watch that.
Yeah.
And so I think that, I was a lot more, let's say, nervous about it. And now all of a sudden I can't even articulate the nervousness of it. You know what? I think it was maybe that I was going to be in a position where I'd have to say, listen, I can be for free Palestine and not demand the destruction of the state of Israel. We can have both things. Although I suspect it requires let's say a spirit of reconciliation that we don't necessarily see in the mainstream narrative of what's going on in Palestine right now. But that is really not even the subject matter of this film. So yeah, I think it's both okay for us to watch and to comment and to discuss, but also perhaps incumbent upon us, especially given the privilege we have as a couple of white beneficiaries of a different settler, imperialist settler project.
Mhm.
All right. On that note, let's get back to the film at hand, Jim. As I said, folks, we are discussing FARHA. Here's the log line from IMDb. A good one this time, Jim.
Okay.
A 14-year-old girl in 1948 Palestine watches from a locked pantry as catastrophe consumes her home. Jim, mind giving us a quick rundown of the filmmaking who's who here?
You bet. I just had it up here. So it's directed and written by a filmmaker named Darin J. Sallam. Darin is a woman, Darin, and it stars Karam Taher as the lead character Farha. Apparently, her first ever film role. A couple of names you might know: Ashraf Barham, or you might have seen these actors in things like what's we were just talking about it, the Claire Danes series, Homeland.
Homeland.
Yeah, and Ali Suleiman. They play respectively the father and the uncle. There's also Tala Gamo, Samira Asir, Mahid Aid, and Firhas Tebe, as amongst others. Cinematography by Rachel Aoun and edited by Pierre Laurent. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chaboyko. I will take this time to shamelessly, before we really get into it, and before we say hello to DMG in the chat, to shamelessly beg for a like, a subscribe, and perhaps a ringy dingy of that bell. Do you got your bell handy, Jim? Or
yeah, I do. The cats haven't hidden it on me again.
It's really a defective bell. Here, let me give you a sound
I don't know
effect.
how to tighten it up here.
All right.
These dollar store items don't pay off in the long run.
We're not quite in the spoiler zone yet. We do have a couple of folks in the chat. A good friend, Dragon Movie Guy, who just put out a video kind of on his him and another YouTube film dude talking about the upcoming Rebel Moon on Netflix.
Yeah.
Check that out. Check out his
I
channel.
was going to watch his earlier, and I just totally got distracted. Yeah. Sorry, Brian.
And Richard L. is in the house.
Hey.
Also hasn't seen this one, but wants to kind of get our take on it. All right. Welcome, everybody. Let's give you a round of applause. Okay, that out of the way. Let's jump right into the spoiler zone, Jim.
Certainly.
Sorry. The spoiler zone. And let me ask you this. Is this film any good?
Yeah, I mean, it's got patience, and it's got I don't know if pace is the right word, but it's got a story to it. You know, sometimes when you spend the day watching YouTube videos and things, that's fine and everything, but sometimes you just really want a narrative, and you know, you get into something like this, and it goes pretty deep. It's very quiet, very slow burn of a film, but yeah, I think it's very well done. I think it requires patience, and it is a bit of a downbeat film. So you know, you're not gonna be dancing out of the you're not gonna be dancing out of the theater or your home theater after this one.
You know what, Jim? I don't mean it's a bad film. But it's not something that if there wasn't such a paucity of options, I'd be like, yeah, I see it, don't see it. Hey, it's on Netflix. It doesn't cost you any money. I really do think your eat your vegetables kind of movies is appropriate here.
Mm-hmm.
You really do have a character who doesn't get to do anything. She does not drive the narrative. And I don't mean that an observer must, well, actually I do. Even an observing character needs to drive the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't get to. FARHA, the FARHA character doesn't get to. And I think for me, Jim, that tells me, and you look into Darin Sallam's, the filmmaker's filmography, this is her debut feature. She has done short films up to this point. And myself, I really was kind of struck with the idea that, yeah, maybe this was a short film script, a short script, and then also some funding came through, and they're like, okay, we got to stretch it out. When I think it really could have benefited, Jim, from a restructuring of the film. This is where flashbacks and something happening, perhaps her on the road to Syria, you know, along with all the other refugees, telling her story in flashback, in segments, I think could have provided with a narrative drive that would have helped us kind of remain engaged. Because otherwise, yeah, you've got a character that she doesn't, I don't mean she doesn't do anything, but she doesn't do a lot.
Yeah.
And, you know, after the first act is done, it's like kind of, yeah, she gets shoved in the pantry, and then that is it until Chekhov's gun shows up, finally, and she gets out. Then she gets to do a very little bit of stuff, and then that's it. And so, yeah, I think because of the way the story is told and the order of it and the straightforward, the straight linear progression, it leaves you kind of going, oh.
Yeah.
Whereas thinking back to, and I've been thinking about Polytechnic a lot lately, in part because it was such a powerful film, but the way Villeneuve chopped up the narrative a bit, have that first scene, which if that scene wasn't there, if he didn't show us the problem right away, it could have really been kind of this, well, when's something going to happen? Okay, see the guy with the gun, then we see somebody having a shower, we see people shave, you know, it's a whole bunch of shoe leather. We have no moment of, oh, there's the problem. Then we can tell the problem. Then we can, and I think this film could have, done with some more workshopping or something, like just a different way to kind of build some momentum.
Yeah.
You know? That's, again, I'd still say see it.
Yeah.
You know, it is worthy of watching. It is worthy of our support because there's such a paucity of these films around, and especially for us as let's say us as English French Americas, settlers in Turtle Island, to see this narrative, a point of view from a Palestinian angle, when, I mean, who hasn't seen Exodus, Otto Preminger's Exodus? Well, okay, maybe a lot of it came out in 1960, but it was still a young Paul Newman, you know?
The kids love that movie.
I think this is why you should see it. And it's not bad, but I think it could have been so much better. That's sort of my general take on the way the story was told.
Yeah, and that's why I think everything in this movie is metaphorical, almost more so than other movies. So, not only is the choice to run it through the character of a 14-year-old girl who's essentially kind of powerless in that society. She's got a hold over her dad, for instance, but kind of a powerless character. And getting to a powerless situation. So I think to its perhaps detriment is that you are forced, like her, you are as useless as she is, locked into her protective barrier there, and she can see everything and she can't do a thing about it. And so
I think even she could barely see anything, which is part of the, I think part of the, it's one of the interesting choices that Sallam made that I think adds to some tension there. It's just 30, 40 minutes of it, and you're just like, I'm as bored as she. Let's say I suspect she's like a composite, actually. Like it is an oral account. It has a vibe of Jim. At the beginning, I'm like, wow, this is like a Disney movie from the darkest timeline. But you could almost, here's the regular normal girls of the village picking figs, and then there's the weird one reading. And you could almost, it's like right there is where the Disney, I just want to read. I want to be a student.
Yeah,
dance
I
number,
want song.
Cue dance number.
Yeah, no, and it has that. It has that in the first act is the I want. This is what, I expect from my life. And so, you're not too far off.
Yeah, like the first act is my favorite act, in part because you know what she wants. You know what her obstacle is.
Yeah.
You know what she is sympathetic. You get what she wants. And you get what the stakes are. If her dad marries her off, she ain't going anywhere. No education, no becoming a teacher. Like all these things happen. And so the first act is good. Again, and I know where this is going because, the Nakba is a historic event.
Yeah.
Hence the darkest timeline crack.
Yes.
Oh, this Disney movie's about to make a turn.
Well, there's two
and
shots.
Not even Bambi turn.
There's two landscape shots. One shows the village in the early and as undesirable as a destination as
that little village, rural village.
There's still, it's sort of set into the hill.
It's life.
And it's like, man, I'd like to spend a week there, just bird watching or doing whatever the hell you do. It looks cozy.
Overpriced Airbnb.
The same shot later on, and it's a smoking ruin, like the same angle, different time of day.
She's
but
stuffed in the bottom left-hand corner, walking out, very reminiscent of Schindler's List.
Oh yeah.
The early shots of Schindler's List with the little girl in red.
Yeah,
you got a interesting, almost like an interesting twist on a survivor walking out.
Yeah. So I mean, it definitely has those elements, and then you could say, and like with Polytechnic that we watched last week, is that I don't think either director wanted to set this up as a thriller or a fun, suspenseful thing. I think that's why Villeneuve brought in the shooting really early, and why Sallam made the choices that she did. And just sort of, this isn't a fun movie. This is something you witness.
But going back to Polytechnic, well, didn't plan it this way, but it's like almost perfect way to compare in some senses. Because he has that moment at the beginning, we understand the problem right away. Here we have no real, it's hinted at. And while that may be an accurate telling from a, she's going to grade 6, like she's a 12-year-old
14, yeah.
girl.
Yeah.
Even the marrying off would be a betrothal ceremony, not necessarily, all right, and off you go live together. But she's clued out, perfectly reasonable, especially in a patriarchal, rural conservative village setting that we're watching. But I think the audience needed to know about the peril soon, like immediately. There's a million beat sheets out there for films, right? But Michael Jamin, I like his. It's pretty straightforward. And in the first act, there's only 3. 2 are right at the beginning of the first act. One is show the problem, then say the problem. And then at the end of the first act, there should be the movie poster moment, the hook into the second act. And here we don't see that. We only see maybe the problem of a young girl who wants to go to the city. Again, that Disney narrative. When it's like, oh, we're not being, much like we never saw the gun in the first act.
Yeah.
We're not being shown the real issue. It's barely hinted at. It's only a little later. And I'm thinking that I can kind of get the rationale, but I think that doesn't do the film it doesn't serve the film very well. Again, yeah, I'll know that I watched this movie, Jim, and I won't have any hard feelings about it, but most of it'll drift away. Whereas Polytechnic, yeah, I don't see myself ever forgetting that film.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. There were I mean, when they were talking about casting the young woman who plays Farha, they said, well, we needed somebody who could sort of hold the screen in a room for 52 minutes. I mean, they knew what they wanted at that point. I mean, they had it, I guess, storyboarded out or what have you. And that would be the, second and third acts essentially. But, yeah, there's almost too many shots of her looking out, and after, with the light coming, down her face there. And I just thought after a while, I thought, there's too many of these shots, but
not that you can see it, folks, but it's in the or Jim can see it, but it's in the poster.
Yeah. No, so there's a little bit of that, but it is what it is. I think, and it says that in the synopses is father chucks her in the side room, and she's forced to witness the disaster from her own point of view, from her spot.
And I'm not again, I don't want to.
There's just different ways to do it.
I don't want to crap too hard on this flick because it's an eat your vegetables movie, but at the same time, and it's interesting because it is this film, much like Polytechnic, a number of other films we've watched, actually I would argue all of them, but a few of our films are overtly political. They're political acts. This is a political act and should be praised for it. That said, because it is a political act and both pro and con, people are like, it's more than it's. I may say it's never just a movie.
Yeah.
To a lot of people, it's way more, or it becomes another zone of conflict. And to give you that idea, some of it's almost, Jim, like darkly hilarious. Some of the comments. Oh my goodness. Here, let's get into the minor overlay, because this is always entertaining. Israeli politicians. I know exactly. What a shocker. These folks, it's like they should revoke, criticized Netflix, ordered the Treasury to revoke state funding for a theater which had the temerity to schedule screenings with the goal of preventing the screening of this shocking film or other similar ones in the future. What's that?
This is the sequel. This is just going to encourage more. Like kids are going to love this one.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, this film, it's not like it, Jim, it's not like it took the film world by storm.
Mm-hmm.
Like, honestly, if we put out a review that we could get on Rotten Tomatoes, we would be 9% of the review base.
Yeah.
Like,
yes,
you know what?
yeah. 8 reviews or something.
This is not a widely seen film.
No.
The attention these right-wing gave it way more leverage.
Well, just from a communications point of view, ignore it and it'll go away by you're just signal boosting it. By my multiples of 1,000.
Oh yeah.
It's the dumbest strategy ever. If you don't want anybody to say, this world, the streaming, all the choices, people would forget about, they would ignore it or miss out. I mean, the reason why I watched is because you suggested it. I knew nothing about it beforehand. And I subsequently have read a little bit about it, but man, just the wrong strategically, it'd be like, if you're playing chess, you give up your king right away. Like it's just anyway.
Well, you're absolutely right. And but also it shows the weakness of like all these hyper nationalist, and Israel is not different in this respect. We have these ding-dongs here in Canada. They're down in the United States. Everyone's got these hyper-nationalist folks that they worship the mythologized past of their creation.
Mm-hmm.
There's almost always a religious, like a zealot angle to it. We don't have to look to Israel to see this kind of ding-dongery. And I'm thinking of Florida. Where they're literally, you can see, we need to protect our children from the lies of slavery. It's like, what are you talking about, you morons? If the history was on your side, if the historiography was on your side, you'd say, much like the opposition is, it's like, well, yeah, that's not how that went down. You do not see that critique here. Unless you're a real extremist, no one is saying, Sallam is breaking history.
No.
The massacres happened. Thousands of Palestinians were murdered during the expulsion, during the war might be the wrong word, but it's the best I can come up with now. But it's almost you got a weird mix, like from the, let's say, slightly left of center in Israel to the crazy right wing. It's either a mix of Turkish style denial. It didn't happen that way. No. They're exaggerating. There was a war on and our independence, to just out and out deny, like it didn't happen that way, and you're besmirching our honor.
Yeah. And we're banning all movies about Armenia and all share music. No reason.
Yeah, exactly. So But when we have it here in Canada, the narrative, and we had a senator, Jim, a senator, who's saying, residential schools did a lot of good. And that wasn't 50 years ago.
Nope.
Not that it would be a good reason then. That was 10 years ago, or maybe 20, And there's still people who think that, argue it. Yeah. So, it was funny. How did Sallam and I like this. There's, sorry. Sallam had this great had a quote in Time magazine. It's the reason I'm so shocked by the backlash is because I didn't show anything. Compared to what happened during the massacres, this was a small event. And she is 100%, Jim, 100% accurate. She really is telling a small episode. This is why I come back to that, this could have been better as a short, and maybe that's where it started. Because it really is a poignant episode, of one person's a small-scaled experience, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way. The horrors of war and genocide and displacement can be shown through that one individual having one, compared to the grand scheme of things, a smaller, horrible experience. But we can find sometimes the heart of it in that one person's experience. So especially with film that loves to put us in the place of the individual, So now mind you, it's not like there wasn't nonsense on the other side. And I don't want to other side it. Let's say the pro and the con of this film. This is combat through other means. This is war through other means. But if you look at the audience rating survey, let me bring it up for you. It's currently over 10,000 reviews, average 4.9, and
either greater or horrible.
Wait, we can see the, let's say the, I've never seen this film on pro and con of the film's quality. Safia H a month ago said, FARHA is nothing short of a cinematic masterpiece that has left an indelible mark on me. This extraordinary film is an absolute gem, and it has all the elements that make it a true standout. Historical accuracy, visuals that dazzle beyond imagination.
Oh.
And a deep well of emotion that will sweep you off your feet. In my book, it's an unquestionable 10 out of 10. And here's why I'm absolutely enamored of it. And oh my God, Safia goes on.
Yeah.
Historical journey, it was like 2 days. What are you talking about, woman?
And 75% of it takes place in 1 yard.
Yeah. and 90% of that 1 yard is one room.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
In a nutshell, FARHA is a cinematic triumph, Jim. A triumph. Okay, so I'm having a little fun. It's Safia's expense, and on one level, I kind of get it. You know what? It's that signal that it's that signal boosting or that signal disruption that these people who have very little power otherwise, want to do to defend this narrative that, well, I love the, I can only quote, I'm quoting a Christian postmodern Bible scholar who was quoting an indigenous elder telling an indigenous story, a foundation story, creation story. And so telegraph, anyone? But I love this, it's I don't know if this actually happened, but I know it's true. And I think that is the heart of this film. That's why the historicity is kind of beside the point. It's not about the Nakba happened. There are many children that I'm sure were orphaned and had to trudge to some forsaken refugee camp who have stories just like hers, just like FARHA's. This is a fictionalized paraphrasing of a story Sallam, the creator of the filmmaker, heard. So I get it. It's just kind of like, ooh, laying on a little thick. Meanwhile, where is it? Oh, you know what?
Whenever I hear the word masterpiece, I figure, is there something wrong with me? I never use that word. I mean, it's just, maybe I'm not using it enough. Maybe half of all films I need to describe as masterpiece.
Oh my goodness. This is hilarious. Like, there's a ton of just cut and paste here.
Oh, I'm sure.
You know, it's just cut, paste, cut, paste, cut, paste.
Well, there was apparently an FARHA campaign against it.
I was trying to find one. Maybe it's some Rotten Tomatoes where it's just so obviously, this is a racist Arab fantasy.
IMDb would be good for that as well, probably. But
yeah. So it's I get it. I get it, Jim. I really do. I get why there's that, but I think it kind of hides. And if we look at Rotten Tomatoes, it's that kind of thing where, because you have this film as a political act, and so there's going to be people who are like, well, I don't want to crap on it because I'm for Palestinian freedom. And so, it's got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, but here, let's take a look here. Okay, that's from 10 critics. And a lot of it is just acknowledging, whoops, damn it, I keep doing that. Sorry, guys. A lot of it's the same thing of just kind of acknowledging that, hey, this is an alternate narrative. It's not the narrative, especially in, let's say, the West, we get in our stories about Israel. One of the positive ones from those folks at World Socialist website. FARHA has come under ferocious criticism from Israeli officials, especially when Netflix announced plans to stream the work. I have to laugh in part because of Netflix went, oh yeah, that's cheap. Sure, we'll give you $50 and slap it on the service, because then we get to say, hey, we're upping our content in these countries for peanuts. That's not totally fair, but I don't think I'm that far off the mark. But it also kind of goes to, there's a lot of positives, mostly because of the context around the film.
Yeah.
And
it's a well done movie. It does like on a technical basis, and that's not sort of faint praise. A lot of different. I mean, this is a Jordanian film, and obviously there's different money coming in for this. I think there's help from the Nat, some Swedish film institute or something to that
classic
effect.
co-production.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things.
The second window, and
this is one of my favorite things about watching these movies is watching all the production company animations that come up before it. Sometimes there's like 9 or 10, but well, maybe not that much, but it's well made. You can't tell that it's from a country or a source that doesn't put out a lot of movies. They use silence a lot through most of the movie, so there's not even like, it's confident enough that it doesn't even seem to require a soundtrack. At the very end, there's a splash of music, I think probably at different times that I didn't notice, but there's a sure-footedness on a technical level here, and
the craft is there.
The craft is totally there.
The production craft.
Yeah,
I
and
think,
that's again, it's not, nothing looked, for what I knew, it could have
yeah.
been a Palestinian village, probably shot in Jordan, I imagine, but
Yeah, my understanding is in Jordan, and they
yeah,
were using, folks who've been living in one of the larger Jordan refugee camps since 1948.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, for f***ing, there are grandchildren who are like, I was born a
Mhm.
displaced person.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, let's get back to the film, not with outside of the politics of the thing. And I do agree with you. It's competently shot. It is the production skills are there. Again, I think it just comes down to the narrative, and that's, heck, if this was my first film, I'd be proud of it.
Oh yeah,
If this
absolutely.
was my first feature after a few award-winning shorts, I'd be like, yeah, I'm ready. And
Mhm.
I do want to see more from this filmmaker,
Mhm.
But back to the film, I did have some other questions for you.
Sure.
We kind of pontificated on it and its narrative and that, but there were some things that happened in the film that I was like, I had to note it. And so here, let me consult my notes.
Certainly.
Of course, I was like, from the beginning,
Writing.
back to my Disney narrative, it's a uncle who encourages rebellious daughter, because there's always that uncle who's standing up for you, right?
Mhm.
Um, Getting back to more like one of the themes, the emotional themes, the emotional about, or do you think Sallam is making a comment by picking a feminist or proto-feminist heroine? Is she also, it's not just about the Nakba, but
Mhm.
about the how maybe change was delayed or sidetracked or arrested, that it's sometimes we can get
Yeah.
wrapped up in the big tragedy
Mhm.
without kind of going, wow, how many other Farhas were out there about to go to the city to get that more formal education, and that maybe she's saying something about that, because we spend a lot of time with that. And even when she's in the
Mhm.
pantry, she's reading a book from her friend, like, this
Mhm.
passes the Bechdel test, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, that dream taken away, stolen
Mhm.
even.
Mhm. Yeah, and you have to think that her life has been upended. I mean, her father, we're told at the end, was sort of went missing, and they never really found out. So she had everything sort of in place right after a good deal of sort of attempting to massage and change her father's mind and
Yeah, one of the
that kind
last
of thing.
shots
Yeah.
we see of normalcy is
Mhm.
over the card, the application, the
Yeah.
permission slip.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And so in addition to everything else, any kind of progress is set back. Any kind of personal victory
Yeah.
done. Like she would be going into a displaced persons camp. I mean, who knows? I would suggest that she wouldn't really have an opportunity to become a teacher, which is what her dream was. There'd be, yeah, she'd be, probably maybe living hand to mouth and that sort of thing too. This movie is coming from a Middle Eastern female filmmaker, so by casting a young woman in 1948, sort of conservative rural Palestine, yeah, I think there's something to that.
I yeah, and Jim,
There'd have
like,
to be.
yeah, I don't, and there are interesting and great filmmaker choices in this flick.
Mhm.
I feel like I've crapped on it so much. I have to praise it where I can. And I think that was a great choice, not just to show us from the the oppressed Palestinian, a young boy, or something. But here's a yeah, I'll say it, a doubly oppressed person.
Mm.
It's a young woman. She is seeing the men together as they discuss who's marrying who.
Mm-hmm.
And ask him why she's such a weirdo.
For,
That she doesn't want to get married.
hey, spinster. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I just want to go to grade 6.
There's some things in here that are some atypical choices, like the sympathetic father. I think it would be a lot more typical to have the unsympathetic father, that she'd have to basically,
well, let's say it was set in
away from.
1946 and we had a couple of years,
Yeah.
and she went to, and then at the end of the Nakba happens or something. I think we could add that. But I thought that was more the Disney component.
Mm.
And if we had had another scene, it could also have been part of the emotional need, is that she might have had a character arc where she was like, my father doesn't understand me, man.
Yeah.
But this decided he was a very sympathetic guy.
Mm-hmm.
Worries. Even the mullah, I read it, at least when he's like, no, at this time, you need to keep her here with you. I read that as we're in a rough time. I don't think you want your daughter. Like, it was about the daughter's safety, not
genuinely, not as an excuse, but it was just like, maybe keep her close to home while this political.
We don't know how this drama is going to play out. And so,
I caught that too. I thought that was,
okay, so
I read it that way, the same way.
So I think she really worked hard in telling this story, is to present these men while having control over her life, not cruelly.
Yeah.
Of course. How do we receive our oral narrative now? In movies. And you think about women talking and the research done before and after that. It's like, all I can think about is a small patriarchal oral community. It ain't that nice.
Yeah.
But at least within the constraints of this film, it is.
Yeah.
What else did a couple other... Oh. There were a couple of... Like, some of it was just transliteration. I was like, blood pool? Oh, means bloodbath.
Yeah.
But this is the one thing I would have liked, is almost like a, that cultural interpreter.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple of behaviors during the wedding, or not really the wedding, but the young woman's betrothal.
Yeah.
Her celebration, with the other women, where something was going on her hands, and FARHA is just giving it the stink eye.
Oh yeah, it's like some clay or something like that, like a brown piece of clay, and it's being wrapped in lace or wrapped on her palm. Yeah, that's something to look up. But
I was like, okay, we're not getting something. But another thing, and I almost rewatched the beginning just to get the lyrics, because we see her, in the classic film kind of thing to do. Oh, we had this moment of innocence. Now we're in the new world, same location, but a different world. Like we've had our adventure. We have now returned, changed. And FARHA is changed at the end of the film, but she's there eating a fig in her swing set. Or swing set. What am I saying? In the swing by the tree.
Yeah.
Something she was drawing in the dirt in the film, and it was kind of...
Oh, yeah, that's right, too.
Yeah, Yeah, I was really struggling. What the hell was she drawing? Oh, it's got to be this tree, the swing set. And so is she hearkening back? Like it's there she is eating this fig, and she looks just kind of, well, bedraggled and,
yeah, shell-shocked a bit.
Yeah, but is it before or after that moment? I want to say it's after that she is sitting by that stream that we see in the very first scene.
Yeah.
And she takes out her braids then, and she lets the water fall over her, which I was like, in a lot of other movies, that'd be that cleansing, reanointing moment. And I'm like, yeah,
That didn't do it.
Well, I'm just kind of wondering what you thought. Like
I thought so. Like I said, I think so many these things are metaphorical. There's a baby.
You don't have that shot because I really need you to know that she wanted to wash her hair.
Yeah.
But it has meaning, and I'm trying to figure out what the symbolism is there.
I think it's as simple as that. A lot of the places that she visits after she busts out of the yard are places that she was before in happier times, even though she wasn't particularly happy then. And even, it's shot maybe at a different time of day. It's shot more colorfully. There was girls singing at the very start.
That's why I wanted to go back to the beginning to go over the words.
Yeah. And then so that's the song you're referring to. Yeah. And I think it had to do with betrothal or something, something along those lines. But she visits all the places that she was before, and they don't seem to give her any comfort. And the sort of joy has been drained out, and she actually takes one last look over her shoulder at the village. It's held for a second, and then she goes walking down the road. And I'm thinking that's her goodbye to the village.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That is a great. I think you've got it there, Jim. There is no comfort. There's her home has been blown up. Her change, I can't say it's a tragedy, although in a general sense it's a terrible tragedy, but not in a story sense. This character has done nothing to bring this hell upon her.
No.
I almost think that scene, well, like all these films set in the past, they're really speaking to the present. And that's the almost representing the grind that I suspect a lot of Palestinians still feel, just that grind of existence and, whether the home was stolen or blown up or bulldozed or.
Yeah. And then, the
where are
baby
these settlers on what used to be our land.
The fate of the baby too, just a warning to Richard if Katie's going to watch it.
Oh yeah.
You're like,
it does not pass the baby test.
One of the last kind of, questions is like, how's the baby? That's been, left out there. And that whenever you have a baby
I got the impression, the distinct it's like, that baby's dead. It may not have been murdered by the soldier who couldn't, the Israeli soldier who couldn't bring himself to do it. The one little bit of humanity. That she sees.
I think the flies and the silence were a good. And I thought, please don't give us a close up. I don't know if I could take that. And
Let me just be sure based on what I don't see.
The in Google, if you do FARHA and baby, if you do a search for that, it self-populates with all those questions, and it's like, what happened to the baby? And I'm like, or the ending explained or whatever. Well,
Oh, yeah.
read
Yeah.
the room, guys.
Yeah.
There's several hints there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you're looking at
Quit wearing your for a hat.
you're looking at a Grapes of Wrath kind of thing there, because there's a stillbirth at the end of Grapes of Wrath, and I think that's, you know, sort of denoting hope, or the lack thereof, or the extinguishment of hope there, and that sort of reminded me of that, you know, the Steinbeck book there.
I got one more question for you regarding the film, like the one of the incidents in the film. Of course, there is a moment, there is that family, you know, that, you know, find some respite, a place to hide and rest and birth a baby, and, you know, maybe pretend they belong there. And then, of course, an Israeli security force rolls in.
With a collaborator?
Pardon?
With a collaborator.
With a collaborator. And the collaborator says, no, he's not from this village. And he's wearing a hood, you know, of course, to hide his identity. And then he recognizes FARHA. I am wondering if that was Nasser.
Oh, it was the uncle. Yeah.
The uncle?
Well, no, not Nasser. No, it was the young man that sort of fancied her.
The cousin. The cousin.
No, that was the uncle. Yeah. He had the watch, and he had the sort of the nice clothes, and the sort of the business.
Oh, you mean
clothes, yeah.
Farhid's?
Yeah, here, what's the name again here?
Farhid's father. Driving the car.
There's two men that they associate with, and one is, what did I do with it here? Let me just do the cast. I think it was Ali Suleiman as Abu Walid. So Abu Farha is the father, and Abu Walid is the uncle who comes in and sort of says, "Oh, give her a chance, let her go to school." Yeah, and then
who takes his sister, Farha's stepmom, Abu Farha's wife, to town or whatever.
Yeah. So there's two men. There's her best friend's dad. Yeah. That's with his own car. Yep. That's one guy, and then it's the uncle who was the
uncle,
collaborator.
The uncle who,
Good Time Charlie.
Yeah. Well, that fun uncle.
You're so beautiful.
Let her go to school.
Yeah.
That kind of hurts me a little. I get an emotional reaction to this film. you know?
Well, I mean, it's not super clear. You see his face very briefly.
That's why I thought it might have been Nasser, and I was like,
that's sort of
kind of lazy,
bigger beard and mustache. But and he was I think he was an older dude.
I saw a young complexion. Okay. All right, maybe I gotta watch that again or something.
Yeah.
But
it's very brief though.
By then I could have been. I'm so bored of this because it is. It's a long time.
Yeah.
Where nothing is happening. Our character is doing.
And it's got those elements that are in there that are sort of like interesting. It's like with, one thing that Stephen King always did well was plot. Like he had interesting plot ingredients in, and you could see where it's going. Like the prison warden that's stealing money, and Tim Robbins knows about it. Not in the book version, obviously, but those kinds of setups are kind of like you can see little hooks there. And one of them is this uncle, and then he comes around and his collaborator with a sack cloth over his face. Two little holes, and so there's elements of I guess standard suspense movies. You would say, I mean, it's not Hitchcock.
I'm not going to say standard. I think good storytelling.
Yeah, but it's sort of. I mean, I was trying to think of the way that it's different from a Hitchcock movie, and it is. I just I just finished it today, so I haven't quite gotten there yet. But it's not that suspense for fun. Obviously, it's telling this sort of excruciating story, and
in some ways, it would have been better as a 3-hour movie hear me out. 3-hour melodrama, throw in a couple of generations, grandma telling a granddaughter about,
Yeah.
the story of their family. I was a young girl who was going to go
Mhm.
to school, whereas this is, yeah. Oh, well. Richard L. says he won't put this on this week's watch list, referring
save
back
it.
to
Yeah.
the baby test.
Maybe save it for after Christmas. Well, January. That's tough. The depths
I,
of January.
I will
But
say you don't actually see. Do you even see really the baby? I think the baby is just
no, it's blurred out.
swaddled,
Yeah.
and yeah, but you don't see ever.
Yeah.
All right, Jim. I think that was it for me as far as questions regarding this flick goes. Is there, as we get into final thoughts,
Well, I have
Mr.
one that
Boyko,
it's a little bit of it.
yeah.
Sure.
Give me a second here. What what are you thinking? What do you have to add before we wrap this up?
I think it behooves people to watch movies from different countries. I don't think I've ever seen a Jordanian movie before. I've seen, Indiana Jones. It's et al. Makes great use of locations like Jordan,
but in the exotic Orient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I mean, maybe a sort of an eat your vegetables kind of movie, but I'm glad to have seen it. The other thing too is that after this, I mean, I know last week you're talking about after watching Polytechnic needing a palate cleanser. So this one, I finished watching this today, just on my own, and my wife said, "You want to watch something?" I said, "Let's watch Reservation Dogs," which is the Taika Waititi produced series on Disney. Very good. And usually the episodes are pretty light, and the episode that was next for us was on residential schools. So I just kind of went, oh, I can't escape it. But it was a good one. It was the Dear Lady.
Let's watch Blood Quantum, especially that part where he went. I can't remember the character's name, but he came back Lysol. It's like, whoa.
Yeah,
oh,
but no, it's a very good series, and they handled it well. But it was just a little bit. It was like, oh, I can't escape this. But they did well. There's a character called the Deer Lady that's
more
awesome.
Settler colonialist horrors.
Yeah.
Done upon it.
Frankly, and to anybody out there that's producing things, I would watch a movie about. I would watch a series about the Deer Lady. Hunting down members of the Catholic Church who ran the residential schools. I would watch that for years. But anyway, just throwing it out there.
Yeah. Myself, Jim. Okay. Richard L. in the chat says an implied baby test. Still a baby. An implied baby test fail. Still a baby test fail. So yeah.
Yes, yeah.
if Richard watches it, it'll be just Richard. Katie will not be partaking. Myself, this is an eat your vegetables film, and well, suck it up, buttercups, eat it. I can say this. I can't say it's a great film. I'm not, a cinematic masterpiece. It is not. That said, I think it is important to us to watch, as you say, not just films from other countries, but films from other countries where we're given a perspective that we weren't necessarily raised with, a narrative, a counter narrative. And I think that's important. I would also say it's really important, especially at times like this, to expose yourself to non-reactionary voices that are, here is some context for you. You know, it isn't just, those evil birds in Hamas and a few, they'll be trotting out the Well, of course, mistakes were made, collateral damage, because they're, you know what, those f***ers too. You know, that's the same as, you know, God willed it. But yeah, there are a lot of other voices out there that you can involve yourself in. Again, I've only, it's the tip of the iceberg, the links I've provided in the description. And yeah, what were you saying? Come and see next week? Because as a matter of fact, folks, we are going to try and get a see it or skip it on a movie that was released, you know, this month.
Domestically, yeah.
Domestically this month. Heck, maybe just in 2023. That said, we will not be, you know what, we may be able to do Boxing Day or the day after Boxing Day. Of course, next Sunday is Christmas Eve, so we won't be having a show then, but we do, folks, look forward to seeing you. And thank you all so much, Richard, DMG, Katie, Fowler, I'm sure is lurking. Yeah, thanks for watching, and remember, it's never just a movie.
Merry Christmas, folks.